spent a few weeks in the English countryside, which is one of my favorite places in the world, and I thought I would show you why. I was there to visit some family, and we spent many cozy hours tucked up in the lounge watching movies and playing the Wii, eating really delicious meals cooked at home or out at local pubs and cafes, and also having lots of fun with art supplies that I brought with me or borrowed or got as gifts or found in various shops around.
And the delicious
favorite the novel, so
I found when I was in a high activity environment that was when I was
One of the things I was experimenting with was these oil pastels that my sister-in-law let me borrow. I'm still very much exploring different art mediums and had been interested in oil pastels, but I hadn't bought any to try yet, and I had so much fun with these. I absolutely love how bold and bright you have to be with them. The first medium I've really been working with is watercolor, and sometimes I can be so timid with how much I water down the paint. And so I love how these really do force me to be bold. And also, since you can't really mix colors, it forces me to choose more interesting color combinations as well. I've since bought some cheap oil pastels since I got home, and I've been having a lot of fun with them. You can get a set of 50 sticks of Pentel for less than $10, and they're super fun to play with. This night we did some homemade pizzas. This is one of mine and my husband's favorite things to do, so we wanted to do it with his family. He usually makes the dough for the crust using a recipe that only takes 30 minutes in total, and then finish off the pizzas by adding our favorite toppings, and they always turn out so yummy.
we could go something different,
What? Trent said?
yeah.
That is gorgeous.
One of my favorite things about English culture is the freedom to roam and just the general love of walks and spending time outdoors. And because English weather is fairly mild all year, you can just spend a lot of time outdoors year-round. This particular walk is one of our favorites because it's so beautiful and it takes you through both fields and the woods and along this really gorgeous river. I often like to bring my little watercolor painting kit with me on these walks and just sit down for a few minutes and paint. I wasn't feeling very inspired by all the browns on this day, so I decided to do a two-toned painting with purple and green and like a tiny bit of yellow. It was a really fun exercise to try, and it kept the painting process a bit quicker, which was very helpful because I was on the walk with my husband and he was very patiently waiting for me. The next art activity I'm trying out is calligraphy. I was gifted an absolutely lovely calligraphy set by my in-laws for Christmas, and I was feeling very excited to try it. I'm using like a reference book they got me, which has been really helpful. I found that calligraphy is a very focused and mindful practice, since you have to think through every single movement of your hand, especially as a beginner. But at the end, I'm always amazed by what I've made and how beautiful it looks, even just as a beginner. And I'm really looking forward to continuing to practice and to improve. Our next stop is Hope Cove. We met up with some family in this very cute and tiny village for a really lovely lunch and a walk afterwards. The restaurant was beautiful, and we finished up our meal with teas and coffees by the fireplace before heading back outside. The island you can see out in the distance here inspired the Agatha Christie book, And Then There Were None, and it's an island you can walk out to when the tide is out, but the path disappears when the tide comes back in. This is another thing I really love about English culture. Walks are often paired with a trip to a pub or a cafe, either before or after, more typically for a warm drink or a meal. Honestly, to me, there's nothing more comforting than going out into the cold to spend time in nature and then heading into a cozy cafe for a pot of tea and a scone. This is a peregrine falcon we saw on this walk, which was really cool because you almost never see them in this part of the country. They much prefer cities with high buildings they can perch on, and he was sitting on top of the first of the 3 rocks in the water, the tallest of the 3. Later that evening, we went on a glow walk through some local botanical gardens, and it was really fun and beautiful. The next day, we went to our local art gallery, which always has really excellent exhibitions on. Last time we were here, it was all about hand-cut paper art, and this time it was about locally made Christmas gifts. I also happened to have brought my sketchbook with me and decided to use some of their leftover Christmas craft supplies to make a really fun collage. They had some cool papers that made me think of space, so I decided to make some planets and stars, and Luke joined me for a bit as well and made his own planet too. This was our last long walk of the trip and was out on Dartmoor, which is a really gorgeous English national park, which is full of tors, these really big hills, which are largely made of granite boulders. And the area is so stunning and unique and is honestly one of my favorite parts of England. The walk we did took around 3 hours and overall was around 11K. is also famous for its wild ponies that roam the whole area. They've been on the moor for 3,500 years and are vital to the ecosystem. Their grazing habits actually support the maintenance of various habitats and other wildlife species, and honestly, it's always really breathtaking to stumble upon them, and we felt very lucky to observe these two for a little while. My top hiking tip from fall to spring is to always bring warm food with you. Often, if we've driven to a hike, we'll leave a thermos stashed in the car full of curry or chili with bowls and spoons for when we finished. Today, we brought Cornish pasties with us, and honestly, they were so incredible.
Nothing better. We finished our walk in Widdicombe on the Moor and stopped by my absolute favorite cafe in the world for a very well-deserved cream tea. Our last stop of the trip on our way back up to London to fly home was actually Stonehenge. As an American, I've always wanted to visit Stonehenge, but funnily none of the Brits I've ever met have ever been that excited by it. This is a model of the town that would have existed when they were building Stonehenge. And this is a model of how they think the stones were carried to this site from other parts of the country. Stonehenge! I really enjoyed learning about the history of Stonehenge and the theories of how it may have been used all those years ago. And while we were there, they were actually studying if Stonehenge actually may have lined up with some of the moon cycles as well as the sun cycles. Honestly, I think just seeing this piece of history that I had heard about for most of my life was such a cool experience, and the mystery of it is so intriguing, and I think that's what has kept us interested in Stonehenge for hundreds of years. Also, they had one of the most extensive gift shops I've ever seen. They literally had wallets, pins, patches, mugs, candles, literally anything you could ever think of with Stonehenge on it, and I did crack and buy a tote bag. And then we were off. This trip was so relaxing and refreshing, and I cannot wait until we return next time.
Parents, A7